Um, I am sales director and responsible for, I'm a sales director at Rajant and also responsible for our go-to-market in terms of how we address the transportation markets. Rajant, is well known, very well known in a couple of sectors where we have great brand recognition and a lot of existing partners, many of you who are on this call today who have really contributed significantly to the success we've had in some of those markets, be it defense or mining and so forth. We wanted to take this opportunity to also share some of the other segments that the kinetic mesh technology addresses, and I'm going to be focused on transportation. I've been in the broadband industry for about 10 years. In that time, I worked for distributors where I was responsible for managing product lines of many different wireless broadband products, and I've also worked for other manufacturers. And I've been fortunate enough to win projects and sell into the segments that we're going to talk about here today. And so my goal is to share some of those experiences, some of what we've experienced, how Rajant applies to those markets, and hopefully there'll be an opportunity for you to think about how you might be able to incorporate it with some customer relationships you have, or maybe it's worth spending time on these segments with Rajant. I just want to repeat one last time, because we have had a number of people join in just the last couple of minutes, that everyone's phone is on mute today, but there is a question tab on the GoToMeeting toolbar, which should be on your screen, probably on the right-hand side. Please don't hesitate to submit any question or comment during the webinar, and I'll do my best to address it in a timely manner. I am getting comments that the audio and the screen seems to be in good shape, so I'm just going to go ahead and move forward. I guess one last order of housekeeping. We have a lot of, we have a really good audience today, and I really appreciate everyone's interest. We have many people attending who are very familiar with Rajant's technology, and then we have some who are not. My plan for this webinar is to just dive right into the vertical market discussion, and then at the end I have a couple of slides where I plan to sort of get into some of the details about the Rajant technology. So hopefully the information at the beginning is useful and relevant and good and new for everybody, or as much as people as possible, and we'll get into some more of the technology at the end. So with that, I'm going to start. So for the purpose of this webinar, at least, we're going to talk about transportation in three sort of sub-segments within the transportation vertical, if you will. So the first would be transit, and that would encompass, passenger trains and buses. We're also, again, just for the purpose of this webinar, we're going to talk about ports and the port environment, as that's an important cog of the moving of goods and services for sure, all over the world, and then airports as well. On the transit side, where the opportunities exist on passenger trains, certainly there's a lot of desire to provide good, high-speed, quality Wi-Fi services to passengers in a lot of transit organizations. That's not always what gets paid for, but it certainly is a common desire that just about any operator has, as well as CCTV controlled CCTV opportunities, right? They'd like to, whether it's video offloading at the end or real time, there's a lot of questions and a lot of interest around providing better and safer public transit. And then train control is a very large application that's driving this industry. I think at least in North America or the United States, a lot of people think of train control, and they think in terms of that, in terms of positive train control and PTC, which will often involve using the 220 megahertz frequency. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to different kinds of train control that are used all over the world, train control systems that for commuter for commuter rails that allow them to increase the number of trains that they put into operation without significantly increasing the risk of accident. And then from a bus perspective, again, I think Wi-Fi really drops off the radar in terms of applications that'll drive connectivity for buses. I mean, they'll handle that with cellular if they do it at all. But the opportunity still exists a lot with CCTV and, again, public safety, but also vehicle health information. The amount of data and the amount of applications that are being offered to municipal transit organizations is it's already mountainous, and it's growing all the time. And there's two real big pieces that accompany that. One is delivering the kind of network that's reliable and has enough throughput to make sure that all that information and all those services can be delivered. And the second piece is something that we don't have anything to do with, but that's taking all that data and figuring out how to make actionable and intelligent decisions with it. Ports, we see a lot of activity all over the world with ports right now. A lot of, it's obviously it's a high stakes environment. You have moving pieces everywhere, but the different forklifts or hostas or trucks or vehicles are running a number of applications, and we're seeing somewhat of a common thread of large port operations looking for opportunities to upgrade the network and the connectivity that they have to all these devices and moving vehicles everywhere within the port environment. And then airports. Airports is another common thread. When you talk to airports operation teams or public safety teams or the police departments of these airports, when you talk about delivering high capacity, high speed broadband speeds to all of the different vehicles, airfield vehicles that exist in an airport, it's a conversation that I've had many times, and it's always been something that there's great interest in. Now, how that high-speed broadband connectivity is delivered and all the different applications that would run over it, I mean, obviously that's up for debate and discussion, but the idea that they would like to deliver a high-speed, fully covered, unified communications platform that might include radio over IP to all their airfield vehicles is definitely a topic of conversation that's going on at a lot of different airports. They also have these emergency response vehicles called ARF vehicles that are decked out with a lot of equipment, and the idea of adding high-speed connectivity so you could create an ad hoc mesh network to public safety vehicles in the event of a disaster certainly makes a lot of sense. And then, of course, there's always the opportunity for wireless to provide connectivity to perimeter surveillance and access control. And it's amazing how many times I've been in an airport, and when you start talking about connectivity to a hangar or connectivity to a perimeter location, how often that they've priced and compared fiber and are thinking about just how expensive and how much trouble that'll be. So I think there's an opportunity there for those discussions. So I'm going to touch then briefly on the Rajant value proposition into those markets. And for passenger transit for rail, it's a very, very strong and clear value proposition. There's basically, I think it's fair to say there's basically about we think of two sort of competitive fields in this space. The one is public, or LTE, and we can get into the benefits certainly of private broadband networks, high-speed broadband networks versus LTE. Depending on the part of the world you're in, you're talking about orders of magnitude increases in throughput, but also there are considerations for public networks in terms of how they're built out in a lot of places where you have rail go through, but also what happens in the event of an emergency or in the event of a large event where you might somehow lose some of the capacity or some of the reliability that you would hope to expect. That's one piece. But the second piece is then there are obviously other people in this space, other broadband companies in this space that try to address delivering high-speed connectivity to passenger trains. Again, when I mention, airports that, there's this conversation is definitely taking place in terms of how do we deliver connectivity solutions to our airfield vehicles. Likewise, at just about every municipal operator, they are talking about high speed. How do we deliver high speed connectivity to our trains? I mean, the conversation often starts out at Wi-Fi, but it really spreads to a lot of different areas. When we compete with other broadband networks in this space, we're very often talking about trackside to train. How do we get, connectivity from the trackside? A lot of operators, they have fiber all along every piece of the track. So how do we get connectivity to a moving train from the trackside? That is the segment where we compete with a lot of, several other broadband manufacturers. But that is also the space where those competitors stop. So there's often a situation where you're in a project where somebody's delivering connectivity from the trackside to the train. Once you get that to the train, how do you disperse it from car to car to car with making sure, while still making sure that you're not taking capacity hits from every single hop, that your latency now all of a sudden hasn't just spiked in such a significant way. And our competitors stop, and that's for somebody else to figure out. Whereas with Rajant, we can do the trackside to train, but we can also do the car-to-car connectivity. And because of the way, many of you know this, that we can go many, many hops, several hops, over and over again without taking significant capacity hits, without bogging down, while maintaining very low latency. We're ideally suited for this car-to-car connectivity, which, if you talk to a lot of the operators, is every bit as much a challenge as actually getting the connectivity from the wayside to the train. And it's a challenge because of what I just discussed in terms of multi-hopping, but it's also a challenge because in a lot of environments, the cars couple and decouple and they move around. And again, with Rajant, this is where we offer a great value proposition, because we don't care how often or when or where they want to move these cars. We'll connect to every single other breadcrumb we see in the network, and so as a car leaves and another one joins, we'll disconnect to the new one. There's also this piece of, historically, when operators wanted to deliver connectivity to trains, they just immediately went to cellular. It was the path of least resistance. It certainly made the most sense, but it's fallen short in a lot of ways. So there's a couple of instances where you might have a hybrid wayside and cellular network. In one case, it would be because the operator is building out a wayside network, but is going to do it in phases. And in another case, it might be that closer to the urban centers where ridership is higher, you would have a wayside network where the capacity is much higher. And then as you get further away where ridership decreases, then you rely on cellular. In either case, somebody or something needs to be accountable for moving back and forth between the wayside and then the cellular connectivity. And this is certainly a challenge for a lot of operators. Again, with Rajant, we would be able to work with the operator, understand their network, and most likely be able to deliver that service as well as the first two, where when we're in the wayside environment, we're going to use the connectivity to the wayside breadcrumbs. And when we are out of that environment and the only connection we have, and as many of you know, Rajant, we're always developing costs, and we're always looking for the best possible path. And if that best possible path is an Ethernet connection that we receive via a cellular modem, then we will use that. And then lastly, you have the onboard Wi-Fi distribution, and as many as you know, Rajant breadcrumbs have the ability to not only operate as a mesh backbone, but then also serve as Wi-Fi APs. So we're able to address all four of these items. Currently, I don't think that we would position Rajant to be the Wi-Fi provider or the Wi-Fi AP provider for many passengers, hundreds of passengers. However, there are many devices on board that, whether they're cameras or fare collectors or any other number of intelligent devices that are on board a passenger train that connect or communicate via Wi-Fi. And we can certainly be a Wi-Fi AP for those devices. So this is our value proposition. We don't stop at just one piece of this. And then in every single piece, we have considerable advantages over the single vendors that operate only in that space. So, because of the inherent flexibility of the Rajant platform, we offer all four of these solutions, if you will, and we do it with a single part number. We can do it with a single part number, right? We can have a single breadcrumb that is on the trackside, that are on the trains, that are delivering all those services. So, in terms of if you think about total cost procurement, and you think about training, and you think about sparing, and you think about services and support, it is an extremely, I think, strong and clear value proposition in the transit passenger rail space. The value proposition in ports is, again, I think, hopefully it's very clear, but this isn't an environment that is just constantly changing. And I don't know that there is a wireless broadband solution out there that deals with change nearly as well as Rajant. So, as cans are moved and stacked and are, and you have all these different, whether they're forklifts or cranes or hostlers or trucks, there are so many moving pieces or components in an port environment. And again, the actual environment itself, in terms of what it looks like from day to day, is just constantly changing. You might have line of sight to a pole from one location and then one day, and then of course the next day you might be completely stacked behind it. So this ability to sort of deal with this constantly changing environment is in a highly mobile environment. Rajant just is a ready-made solution for that environment. As you might imagine, security in all these. Anytime you're talking about transportation infrastructure, it's a vulnerable. Well, it's not. Hopefully, it's not vulnerable, but certainly is a target for all kinds of nefarious activity. And so, security is always going to be a question or a conversation. And again, Rajant, in terms of the security of our protocol and all the security enhancements and features that we've developed over the years for our traditional customers, bode very, very well for this market. And then the other thing that we offer with the value proposition in ports is, the idea that you can use a breadcrumb as a repeater, right? So extending cable infrastructure or fiber infrastructure throughout these ports, again, is everything's changing and moving and cutting and so forth. The ability to deliver that network using breadcrumbs as a repeater, so they don't have to build out a cable infrastructure, is a great value. And then lastly, more and more of the applications that we are seeing in this space require real-time communications, and so therefore the ability, the extremely low latency and so forth, it bodes very well here. I'm sorry, I stalled a little bit there because I got a question, and I want to make sure that I address the questions as they come, and I guess I'm easily distracted. So we did get we got a question regarding the cash crumb from someone, and this is a specific product question. It is very useful and interesting. It could be a useful product, a useful technology in this space for sure. And the cash crumb, just so everybody knows, is a Rajant breadcrumb with a lot of processing power and storage, internal storage, that allows applications to be run over it right at the edge of the network. And I will get it more into, like I said, at the end of the webinar, about certainly the technology and the different products. And then the value proposition at airports. Again, I want to address sort of two competitors. First being cellular, and then the second being other broadband technologies that people might suggest to address this market space. So in terms of cellular, you know, it's always a conversation of OpEx versus CapEx. Obviously, with the private network, you don't have the monthly recurring costs. And again, you know, cellular, we talk to a lot of customers, a lot of whether it's municipal public safety or airports. There's a lot of customers who have a lot of hesitation in using cellular devices for a situation where they want to have access and full connectivity in the event of a public emergency situation. So the idea that we won't bog down or that we won't become overloaded in those situations is something that's certainly a value as well. And then, of course, you know, high-speed data, we can deliver voice and video applications, and we certainly, again, in certain areas, depending on where you are, cellular will suffer when you put those higher broadband applications on them, especially in the uplink. In terms of other products, this is probably a good opportunity for me to discuss very, very quickly handover. Because most other wireless broadband products that we see in this space are dealing with the mobile environment in terms of handover. They don't necessarily come, well, they don't come from the same background as Rajant. Our first applications that we started shipping products to back in 2002 were for mobility. They were mobile applications, which makes us very, very different than just about anybody else that addresses this space. So in an airfield environment, we're making many, many simultaneous connections, right? Connections between vehicle to vehicles, vehicles and infrastructure, infrastructure and infrastructure, whereas our competitors are really dealing with, they're handing over essentially at the end of the day, point-to-point link. So if you have a vehicle with a CPE in it that is connected to a base station, at some point it's going to move to the next base station, and there's going to be a handover there. And depending on what the application is, it might not really do well with that handover. But there's this other thing too, which is this idea of overloading. So, and we get this question, I get this question just about every time I meet with in the airport environment. Ultimately, somebody wants to know what happens in the event that the bulk of the airport vehicles are all in one section, whether it's an emergency or whether there's something happening that you have, you know, just a very large number of vehicles in one area. And very often, a base station or standard AP can become overloaded. And then you have to start talking about priorities and decisions and who's able to stay on and who has to get kicked off. Obviously, with Rajant, we make many, many, many connections. We have very, very large single individual meshes. And this is something that when that topic comes up, that we have a great answer for. We also scale, obviously, better than just about any of those other solutions. So in terms of, you know, when the airport needs grows or more vehicles are added, or, you know, they just want to expand into certain areas, we don't have to go back to the drawing board and figure out the whole network over again, right? We scale very, very well in this environment. And then the no single point of failure argument is very, very, weighs very heavily in this market as well. Oops. Okay, so uncovering opportunities. In this section, we just wanted to sort of describe the environments, you know, as we see them. And again, you know, this is just based on, I think, interacting with, you know, these kinds of customers and these kinds of applications over, you know, a longer period of time. And hopefully, you know, you're able to you know, develop trends or become aware of sort of, you know, like-minded things that happen within these spaces. So this is an opportunity for us to share with you at least how we see it. And, you know, maybe there's an opportunity then at some point in the future where we can discuss this further with you and see if it makes sense for you and your market. In the transit space, the consultants play a very, very important role. And there's a handful of them that are national. And in most cases, at least in North America, I know, and I think in many other parts of the world as well, the consultants are not just working with, but are really embedded in the transit organization and are a very important part of those organizations and serve an important function and a certain role in terms of knowledge and experience and accountability. So, finding out who the various consultants are in the different markets and understanding their role with that operator, and then, effectively communicating, what ours and what your value proposition is very helpful. You might be able to leverage your existing municipal contacts if you have them in this space. Train control tends to be addressed by, again, a handful or so of very large system integrators. There might be opportunities for you all to become some subcontractors in those situations. And then public safety arms, right? So transit organizations very focused on public safety. They have police departments and they're arranged in different ways, but a way in the best way in might be often to have a discussion about public safety, because it seems like there's always a conversation of what they'd like to have. If you start at real-time CCTV is something that you'd like to have, there's then usually what they end up with. So it's maybe an opportunity to speak with that group about what their goals are and what they're currently living with. And then you could do a train trade show, every week of the year. If you're looking to travel, literally just pick where you want to go and then find the train trade show that's going to take place in that city. But at least here in North America, on the transit side, the American Public Transportation Association, or APCO, is a member organization, and I think it's an important organization to many of the transit companies that are based here. So that's one that's usually a good start. Ports, all the different ports, there's a lot of port management companies, there's operation and stevedore companies. The actual end user ports themselves, I'm sure are good places, worthwhile to understand. If you have relationships there, or you can leverage relationships there, that's helpful. But often it might be the operations companies that work in the port environment that are a good place to start. And then, of course, there's again, this is at least in the United States, actually it's North America. There's the American Association of Port Authorities, and they have a lot of good events, and they're a really strong organization. And we've spent time there, and believe it's worthwhile. And then with airports, if you're working with the IT department, if they've already been asked for this or they're actively seeking it, then they're a good place to start. But if they're not actively seeking it, if nobody's asked them for it, then they might not be a good place to start, because now you're just giving them something else to do or think about. And there is just no shortage of things to think about and concern yourself with when it comes to the operation of an airport. So, a better place to start might be, the director of operations. They have people and vehicles in the airfield all the time that are running reports and doing different maintenance activities, and they often will have some way that they would like to improve that or improve that whole operation. So that's often a good place to start. Most, if not every airport, has a public safety arm, a police arm. They have these large ARF vehicles. Again, they're outfitted with just probably millions of dollars worth of equipment. So the idea that you could outfit it with a breadcrumb, and then every vehicle in the airport that has a breadcrumb in it, you can develop, again, these ad hoc mobile networks that can stream voice and video in the event of emergency, is something that I think they find exciting or interesting at the least. There is a airport Council International, which is a very large organization and does a number of events every year. And then there is the Triple AE, which again in North America is the American Association of Airport Executives. Again, they're another good organization. And they're broken out, I believe, into 5 or 6 regions. So if you just want to work with the group in your region, they're usually, I think, accessible and might be a good way to start as well. Influencers and decision makers, and I just touched on this very, very briefly, but on the transit side, sometimes the wayside connectivity are wrapped into larger procurements. And then the other thing we're seeing is that they work in silos, right? So you have signaling and communications, which they're in bold because they, at the end of the day, are the ones who get to make the decisions about what goes up in terms of communication on the wayside very often. I guess that's safe to say. And then you have public safety and you have passenger experience. And there's really sometimes, well, there's this idea that there are critical applications, and train control is a critical application, and it's seemingly everything else, such as Wi-Fi or dynamic advertising or even CCTV and other things, fall outside of that space. So that typically is the environment that we see. And then, of course, ports and airports, they're recipients of a lot of federal spending, and so their budgets are set well into advance. And what they will more than likely do when you speak to them is if they see the need and want the need and it makes sense and you're able to connect, they'll then find it'll be a vehicle, or it'll be someplace in the budget. It might fall into any number of these different spending vehicles that they receive. And so it's a long-term planning thing, right? So I think I have the note here, talk to them today so that they can put it into their next fiscal budget. The experience I've had is, even if they really are excited and have a great need and are excited about it, the day you're talking to them, they're going to start thinking about it in terms of the next fiscal budget. And then just the ROI considerations. I just want to remind again, the total cost of procurement is the real value proposition, right? That you're dealing with one vendor for all these different disparate needs. And I do know that, there have been a lot of projects out there on the transit side where, one piece of that is falling apart. Often it's the piece where they're going between cellular and wayside, but also car-to-car connectivity. And you have people who are just pointing their fingers at each other and who are saying, well, I'm doing my part. It falls down to some integrator, it falls down to some consultant who then has to figure out, how am I going to put all these pieces together and make this whole thing work? And the ability for us to perform all these multiple functions is really key here. Ports, one of the big ROIs is obviously less cabling infrastructure and then future-proofing their network as well. Because there are some of these environments where the vehicle or the end device will just be a Wi-Fi component for now, because that is enough to meet their current requirements. Obviously, with the Rajant network, you can extend the infrastructure without running cable everywhere. You can use the breadcrumbs to act as Wi-Fi APs so that they can then communicate with their client devices. And then in the future, if the end user device now requires greater throughput or more real-time reliability or no disruption between Wi-Fi handovers, then you can just simply add a breadcrumb to that vehicle, and their network is already prepared for that application. And then at airports, we offer just a lot. The ROIs, we offer a lot. I think fewer infrastructure radios, especially compared to a Wi-Fi solution, and the opportunity to offer a unified communications platform. Many of you might know that we offer TROIP, which is tactical radio over IP, and there's a lot of other solutions I'm sure that many people on this call put together where you could put all that together. I have a comment that says one transit company said they budget $250,000 just for maintenance of their current system. So So I assume that's I assume that's expensive. As long as it's up and running and working, I guess that's the first priority that they're happy with. But that certainly is something that we have an opportunity that we've worked with recently as well. And the operator, it's a train control project. And once the project's installed, the operator is going to be responsible for maintaining the network. And it is a serious consideration. And so again, you hand them over a network that has all these disparate parts to it, and then at the end of the day, you know, the project's over, and now they're responsible for managing and maintaining this network, and they have a problem. How do they address it? Again, it becomes a lot more costly for that operator at the end of the day. So I appreciate the comment. Thank you. So that wraps up. Let me see where we are. Yeah, good. So it's 11:36, or at least we're 36 past the hour wherever you are, and that really is the end of our notes on the applications. And if you have any questions that you'd like to ask about them, please again continue to submit. And what I wanted to do now is spend time on Rajant, the technology itself, how we operate. I think it won't take too much longer, but certainly wanted to make sure that I touched on that for those of you that aren't as familiar with a lot of you who are. So, so very good. So with that, I'm going to get into a little bit of Rajant 101. So for all these applications that we discussed, right? So Rajant, you know, our technology is unique. It's unique in the sense that what I believe is fair to say is we deliver mesh as it was intended. I mentioned, you know, many years ago that I was with a distributor. I was responsible for many lines, and that was at a time when a lot of mesh network or a lot of mesh manufacturers started to come on, started to launch. And I remember the promise. It was a fully dynamic network. It was completely self-healing. It was, you were supposed to be able to just deploy these networks. They were supposed to be able to have no single point of failure, completely self-healing, completely dynamic. And, you know, from our perspective, it's, you know, add a node, remove a node, move a node, or move all nodes. And that's what I understood mesh to be, and from the beginning. And to be, I think it's very fair to say that that was not the promise that was delivered by many of these manufacturers. Not to say that they didn't have a good solution or that they couldn't deliver in certain applications. It just wasn't what the promise of mesh intended. So I think Rajant delivers on that promise. We have obviously the breadcrumb network, and then the InstaMesh proprietary software technology that really drives what makes us special. We are multiple radios in single units and single breadcrumbs, transmitting and receiving on multiple radios, on multiple frequencies all the time. So any breadcrumb in the network that we see and that we connect to, we do connect, we maintain that connection. We don't drop connections because we made that connection. And we're monitoring that connection constantly, and we're developing a cost. Notice there's no word of a controller. There's no word of any pre-planned routing protocols. All of this, all of the breadcrumbs have the ability to operate autonomously, to operate independently. They're evaluating all of these connections that they have and developing what we call a cost. And on a packet-by-packet basis, they're making the most intelligent and the most efficient routing decisions for your traffic, depending on what those various costs are. It's an incredibly efficient network. And again, because there is no controller, there is no sort of pre-planned routing calls, because they're making those decisions in the field on the fly dynamically, we can deal with change exceptionally well, whether that change is in the form of things that are moving and mobile, or whether that change is in the form of an environment that is, become, maybe a certain part of it is challenged with RF all of a sudden because somebody else is throwing up some network to do something else in this particular place, or maybe you had something happen that has just changed the whole, like in the port environment where you had line of sight today and now you don't tomorrow. We deal with all of that on the fly in the field. Sorry, I have a question on transportation. I'm gonna very quickly finish this slide and then I'll get right back to it. And then the other thing that is really, really key to Rajant is this ability to scale. We, again, deal with a lot of competitors that once you start adding nodes, once you start building out further the network that was originally planned, you run into a lot of problems. You run into a point where you have some serious degradation issues. If you get into a situation where you're having to extend over multiple hops where you don't have LAN ingress readily available, you run into a lot of trouble there. Rajant addresses all of these very well. You can add many, many nodes to a network, and rather than bogging us down or creating issues, you've created more opportunities for more efficient traffic and ultimately improved the overall performance of the network. The question we do have on the transportation market is as follows. The transportation market is one that seems to experience very long sales cycles. Do you have any special insight on how to expedite or avoid the process of getting too bogged down in the periphery? And no, I don't. This certainly is a market that does have some longer sales cycles, and it is a market that always goes out, seemingly most often, to RFP. So I think if you're asking me, maybe the way to sort of one approach that might be helpful in sort of being over, it's going to be, I think that most often it is a long sales cycle, and if for nothing else, because it's even this hard to get access to the trains a lot of times, right? To take trains out of service for installation and so forth. It's a big thing to do. I think the thing that might be most helpful in that environment is in your market, again, to sort of see who are the embedded consultants, who are the counted on consultants. They play a really important role, and if you can clearly express how you can address some of their challenges, because not in every market have they had all these successes, right? There are certainly projects out there where there are failures, and maybe even at some level the consultants were originally involved and unfortunately maybe selected a technology that didn't necessarily deliver everything that they wanted. I think that sometimes there's an opportunity to endear yourself to consultants when you have something that is really of value to offer and can address challenges that they've had or that they have. And if you can do that in that case, then maybe sometimes you can get quicker access to running a pilot or to running a proof of concept. And I think maybe that's one way to, if not accelerate the process, is one way to at least maybe better position yourself and hopefully Rajant for when things do get choppy down the road. Okay, so I think I have one more slide. And again, it just talks about the idea of a living network, which is a really powerful, I think, way to think about Rajant. The idea that, it is kinetic, it is dynamic, it is moving, it is evolving, and it is adaptive. So, self-healing, it can be ad hoc, it can be quick deploy. We have a lot of customers in this space that use the product to be able to throw up mobile ad hoc networks on the fly and to have networks up very, very quickly. Again, as your requirements evolve, The network can change. It can morph very easily to sort of live with your requirements. We have multiple frequencies, multiple radios to overcome some of the challenges that many of you see in the RF environment. We can support hundreds of moving nodes and hundreds of infrastructure nodes that continue to grow. And then, you know, one thing that's very, very clear too is that we've delivered in some of the most extreme applications all over the world. So I have one other question. Oh, it's a great question. Not that the others weren't, but this one is saying, I came in late to the presentation, and will this be available to view later? And I should have mentioned that. I think I was asked to mention that this is being recorded. So yes, we will make sure that the link to the archived webinar is accessible for everybody. And with that, you know, that's all I really had planned for today. I think we're 45 minutes after the hour. I greatly appreciate everyone's interest. There's more information available on our website at rajant.com. We have industry segments within, so there's a transportation segment and others where you can go in and get more information. You know, I think that there's a lot of good information on our site. Please don't hesitate to contact me. It's just occurring to me now that I should have had a slide with my contact information. But I'm kfitzgibbons@rajant.com. Certainly there's a million different ways you can reach out, either through our website or through our partners to reach us. I'd be very grateful for further conversation on these or any other notes you have. And again, thank you very, very much for your attendance and for your interest in Rajant. Thank you. I'll stay on the line for another minute or two in case anybody else has any question they want to pop open. Otherwise, enjoy your day.